Good morning. Today is April 5th, and while COVID protocols have reduced our in-person gathering to only a handful of family and closest friends, I am so grateful that we could meet in person at all, especially in this beautiful Trinity Episcopal Church, which in so many ways reflects and represents the social and cultural heart and soul of our little town of Shepherdstown, West Virginia. And the rector, G.T. Schramm, has been a longtime friend of Scott and I. Today, most of you are present for Scott via live streaming, or will be present via a recorded replay of this service. So to you, I would like to take a moment to provide the context for the special people who have honored Scott by their participation in his memorial service. Assisting is the Reverend Robert Copperthwaite, my college roommate, dearest of friends, father of my goddaughter Sarah, who adored Scott and also referred to us both as her daddies, other daddies. Our cellist and dear friend, Maestro Stephen Sarkowski, has performed and collaborated millions of times with Scott over decades and played at Scott's mother's theme. Pianist Dr. Lucy Morrow, or should I say Grammy Award-nominated pianist Dr. Lucy Morrow, has been Scott's dear friend since their years at the Peabody Conservatory. And they have performed and collaborated for 40 years and co-authored and edited so many popular volumes on ensemble music and texts on piano pedagogy that I've lost count. Chris Beard is Scott's brother, husband of Jennifer and father of Scott's three nephews, Nathan, Nicole, and Brady. Dr. Marty Kwan, their deep and lasting friendship with Scott began in the first grade. More about Marty in a moment. Dr. Mary J.C. Hendricks, the president of Shepherd University, where Scott served for 2.5 decades as professor, dean, and most recently provost and senior vice president of academic affairs. Scott valued their close relationship and tireless collaboration on programs and initiatives that always ensured innovation and excellence at Shepherd University. Dr. Laura Kafka-Price, are you getting the idea now that he's surrounding himself with some pretty high-powered people? Dr. Laura Kafka-Price and Scott were friends during graduate school at the University of Maryland, where they each earned their doctorates, and they have performed together countless times at embassies and on tours over many decades. Laura has a glorious voice. More on her in a moment. My name is Alan Gibson, and I've been Scott's life partner for 30 precious years, because I am well aware that not a single clergyman in the free world would want me to speak at an audience at this extremely emotional time in my life. I promised to adhere to another of today's protocols. And you may have noticed something different about the way I'm talking. I'm reading. As many of you quickly discovered, Scott's passing at 11 minutes after 5 on Sunday, March 28th, precipitated an avalanche of comments and praise on social media and on the university website. We're not talking likes and shares. To scroll through and read the hundreds and hundreds of heartfelt tributes and view photos and video clips from family, friends, colleagues, and especially students, one needs to set aside an entire afternoon, because he touched and inspired so many people in both his personal and professional life. As a child in Sunday school, I memorized one of the lessons that we heard this morning. We called 1 Corinthians 13 the love chapter, and you typically hear it at weddings. But since I consider our life together one of the greatest love stories in the history of civilization, I chose it for this memorial. My take on it, though, is slightly different. For 40 long and lonely years, I pretended to be something I was not. I came to dread family reunions, where relatives and other experts on marriage would predictably ask me when I was going to settle down. I'd predictably repeat my practice non-answer, only to hear, well, you obviously just haven't met the right woman, and And when you do, you'll know because you'll see fireworks and bells will go off in your head like crazy. Well, I nearly went crazy, forcing myself into relationships with perfectly wonderful women, and one by one, breaking their hearts without a good explanation. I certainly didn't get the promised bells. What I heard and saw in my head instead were buzzers and sirens and flashing red warning signs that fortunately kept me from making terrible mistakes. Until the day Scott Beard and I made eye contact for the first time in a coffee house in Fells Point, Maryland. I didn't hear bells then either. What got my attention was what the scripture said. It tells us that love isn't supposed to be noisy gongs and clanging cymbals. And it was even more than that. It was a whole percussion section. And it jump-started my heart. It rewired my brain. My life completely changed. Talk about being born again. And I hope I'm not being blasphemous. Robert Scott Beard's personality was an intriguing mixture of competence and humor. And his sparkle and laughter had a magical ability to uplift and transform the lives of everyone he met, in every room he entered. And I witnessed this almost immediately. He'd arranged to spend a few weeks at the French Piano Institute's Piano Festival in Paris, where leading French composers and pianists ignited his love for French piano music. I joined the tail end of that festival in time to watch Scott win the Roussel Foundation Prize for the best performance of a piece by composer Alphonse Roussel. I couldn't have been prouder. The next day we rented a car, our first Mercedes. And we both agreed he had the most effective windshield wiper ever. And we made a celebratory tour of France, overnighting in glorious castles and private chateaux. It was probably the first and last time we ever organized a trip so well. There was one night when we had no plans. And driving through a small, nondescript town, we passed two nondescript side-by-side buildings. One said hotel, and the one next to it said piano bar. Taking it as a sign, we pulled over quickly and checked into the hotel. Very modest hotel, I might say. And then we raced next door and entered what turned out to be a dark, shabby, and empty bar. In the movie version of this story, the sign will, of course, flicker. We elbowed each other, and we were about to turn to leave when a tired-looking, middle-aged woman with a pile of bleached blonde hair that was beginning to fall greeted us. She was wearing a sequined sheath dress that probably fit her better in previous years. In Scott's best French, he asked what time the piano music would start. And with a sad wave of her hand, the woman said there would be no piano music. Unless, of course, you were a pianist. Well, being the ad guy in the group, I informed her that, yes, he was a pianist. And her eyes lit up. And then I couldn't resist closing the deal, so I added that he had just won an international piano prize in Paris. That extra tidbit was totally unnecessary. We had her, and yes, he's a pianist. She led him to a small stage and dusted off the keys of the grand piano and asked him to play the piece that had won him his prize. Scott obliged, and I watched as she intently and carefully and emotionally followed his music, connected with it. She applauded, and then Scott asked what she would like to sing. As they felt their way through a mixture of American and French songs, I saw color come back to her cheeks. And soon they were singing duets. And in the span of 10 minutes, her voice became stronger, she stood taller, and she regained her footing and became the lounge singer diva she had always been. I heard the pop of a champagne cork and noticed her bartender husband using the wall phone, one of those little French phones with the two things you have to use. In no time, the lounge was packed with a lively crowd of people glued to this new piano player and to the diva who had returned to the stage. Scott and the diva played and sang and took requests nonstop for 3 or 4 hours until the room went silent and all eyes focused on an elderly French veteran who stood at attention and saluted Scott as Scott played and sang the man's request for American Beauty. We've both told that story a million times. I mean, it's an amazing story. But we told it from different points of view. Scott's version, of course, is very self-deprecating. And he focused on the fact that a moment like that would never happen in the United States because he would be told that only the regular piano guy was allowed to touch the piano. He's the only one that has a key or something along those lines. And I look at the evening as a manifestation of Scott's incomparable ability to conspire. And it was a further affirmation that I was the luckiest man in the world. Scott taught his music students that anything was possible. Every one of them knew of his adoration for Leontine Price. He owned every recording she ever made on cassette, on even vinyl, on every CD. And in his closet were hanging photographs and autographed posters of Leontine Price. As much as I tried to discourage bringing our iPads to bed at night, I failed. But most nights he would listen to her sing. I didn't mind. All right, so let's call this what it is. She was his idol. And again, I'm sorry for the blasphemy. How remarkable, then, that his dear friend Laura Hoffa, who was already a glorious singer, and who just sang for us today, would marry Brigadier General George Price, the brother of Leontine, his idol, and a man whose words would also serve to inspire both Scott and me in a million ways for many years. I mentioned Leontine Price not to name drop, and because Scott didn't just teach piano. He taught piano performance. And he didn't just teach piano performance. He taught his students the importance of polish. You know how Scott loved his labels, his beautiful suits, his ties, shoes, luggage. For him, that wasn't substance or conceit or anything like that. He appreciated it for its quality, craftsmanship, beauty, style, design. As a friend recently pointed out, I can be snobbish enough for the both of us. He never needed any of that. No, for Scott, all that he had was for fun. For part of polish. Polish he added to everything. Like garnish, he added to every single dish. He held up Leontine's magnificent career as an example of possibility. The outcome of talent, study, technique, practice, determination, hard work, and polish. And one other very important ingredient for success. Because a girl born in the tiny, obscure town of Laurel, Mississippi in 1927, for her to end up the most famous soprano in the world, and the first African American to become a leading performer at the Metropolitan Opera, and to hold the title for the longest recorded ovation ever. That took an incredible amount of courage. Study, technique, practice, determination, hard work, polish. Scott had all those. He figured those out right away. At the very early age, his teachers recognized the prodigy they had on their hands. He didn't just study piano. He was one of those rare, exceptionally gifted students, a straight-A whiz kid who was consistently winning the prizes for math and science. He sang in the choir, he acted in the school plays, and in the musicals, and somehow every year he managed to reprise his role as Friedrich von Trapp in Sound of Music. If you thought his life was perfect, you'd be wrong. Let's get back to the courage part of the success equation. What Scott never told his students was that in public school he had been relentlessly and mercilessly bullied and tormented. All for being talented, good-looking, smart, different, and better. His friend Marty knew, and from day one she had his back. going so far even as to take a punch break and receive a black eye in the process. She helped him discover his own courage to forge ahead despite this tremendous adversity and continue to get good grades and continue to play the piano and continue to sing in the school music and continue to strive for excellence. And she tells people he was smarter than her. So she had to work harder than he did, which is why she ended up valedictorian and Scott salutatorian. She said it was like 2/10 of a point. All this hard work took him to the Peabody Conservatory, and the rest is history. He never told his students about the bullying because he never whined about it. He never used it as an excuse for any lack of accomplishment, and he never looked back. I have never met, nor will I ever meet anyone with as much courage as Scott. Cooking was one of his passions, as we know. It's a well-known joke that in our 30 years together, I only cooked 3 times. But truth be told, it was probably more, 6 or 7 times. But because cooks need people to enjoy their masterpieces, mealtime with us was another way we formed a winning team. And our 30 years were filled with adventure, from living for 7 years aboard a boat to owning an apple orchard, from strolling the streets of Paris to screaming along a zip line in the cloud forest of Ecuador and hovering peacefully in a hot air balloon over the pyramids of Mexico City or the Valley of the Kings in Egypt. We had a very full life together. We had many dreams. There were very few concerts or recitals or lectures of his that I did not attend. And when he was on stage, no one's heart beat faster with pride than mine. And I knew when the events were over and he finished signing autographs for his adoring fans, this talented, accomplished, beautiful man who sang like an angel, the love of my life, would be coming home with me because he had chosen me.
Thank you. 55 years ago, Alan and I met on the campus of Washington and Lee University. And our friendship has continued through the years. I'm not here to sing Scott's praises, though I could add some to what have already been mentioned. Alan is our daughter Sarah's godfather, which I guess made Scott her step-godfather. Find her Facebook page and read